Hi, it's Fiona at Digital Landscapes, and we are going to take a look at scanning in drawings done on tracing paper. So scanning in or taking photographs of how you can clean them up and make them look better. Now, the reason this has been on my mind is because I teach at London College of Garden Design, and the students need to show their design development work. And over here at Digital Landscapes, we are massive fans of hand drawing. Just because we teach you digital drawing skills does not mean that we don't think it's really the best form early on of drawing to kind of get your ideas flowing, work out the space, be creative. It's very immediate and incredibly satisfying. But when you bring in tracing paper, either if you want to manipulate the drawing further in Photoshop or put it in a presentation like this, you can see that it can end up looking very grey. If you take photographs and the lighting isn't very bright, you get this kind of bluey tone. And sometimes, and this is actually not a bad example, they can just kind of look a bit muddy. So I just want to show you a couple of techniques in Photoshop for how to avoid this. So I've got 3 examples here. This one is mine. This is a client's hand drawing that I have put into CAD. It's a very old drawing. And this is one that I found on the internet, and I will be asking their permission if it's okay to use it in this video, along with the examples I just showed you. I am going to start with this one. So what we are going to be doing is called non-destructive editing. That is, it will leave this base layer as it is. And the way you do that in Photoshop is with the adjustment layers. So it's the circle, the little diagonal line on it, and I'm going to start with brightness and contrast. This is always an easy place to start, and then we can just move these sliders up and down. So the problem with this is it's quite crude. You see, it will increase the brightness across the whole image. So up until a point, it's quite useful. The contrast makes the difference between the black and white more obvious, so that, you know, that's okay. A better one though, and actually that gives more control, is to use the curves. So this is a graph, and it allows you to change how much black and white is visible, and it also allows you to change the blackness of the black, which will become more apparent in one of the other examples. So I am just going to do this, and I'm just going to slide that there, and I'm going to move this, which will change kind of the range of the whiter end. Make sure that is right in the corner. Yeah, I think that looks good. If I zoom in, you can see it is clear, just it's slightly harder to see on the monitor. So I would say that is pretty good. One thing I can do to test it is to get a white brush up. And in this case, it's going to be quite handy because I can just, I just need to create a new design layer. So I'm just creating a new transparent layer over the top. There we go. And when I remove that tracing paper, and I'll just remove these edges, you can see that is pretty good. So yes, it can be a time-consuming process if you've got loads and loads of drawings. But if you've just got a couple of key ones that you want to clean up, that is probably the quickest and easiest way to do it. Now, this is a more complex example, although very typical. You know, tracing paper is really easy to damage. You fold it or crumple it slightly and you're going to get some shadowing and some highlighted areas. It can slightly be improved by scanning it in with a proper scanner as opposed to taking a photograph. But yeah, it's difficult to avoid those kind of errors. So again, if I open a curves adjustment layer, I can kind of deal with it. You know, it's okay, but I can still see that there is some shadowing there. So what I want to do now is I am going to click on the background to make sure it's selected. The background is by default, it's locked and called background when you open an image. And I'm going to select color range. So what this does is it selects pixels within a certain color range. So that includes the color value, the RGB value or CMYK, but also the darkness of that colour. So if this fuzziness is very high, it's going to select everything that's kind of almost that colour. I would say having it on 30 is a sensible place to be, otherwise you're going to select too much. So if I click, you will see some areas have become white. So it's all of those areas that are close to the colour value where I clicked. If I hold down the Shift key, my mouse pointer changes to get a plus on it, so I can now add to that selection. It's important to keep an eye on this thumbnail because it's not always obvious to the naked eye what's been selected. So I can see that there's some shadowing up here, which will be about here. I can very slightly see that it's lighter, but you may not pick that up with the naked eye. I certainly wouldn't if I didn't have this open. So I'm just going to move around the image and make sure that I have selected all the bits that I want. And I'm looking for this whole thing to end up white. A little bit here and there, and then a tiny bit there, and a tiny bit of shadowing over here. Yep, that looks good. So when I press OK, you see it's now selected all of those areas of grey. And what I can do is, because we are editing non-destructively, I've created a new layer. I'm going to call it white just for clarity. And I can get a brush, make sure my brush is on 100% white. So it's 255, 255, 255. And then I'm just going to draw over like so. So that is instantly lightens it up. Now you might rightly think that some of these have gone a bit kind of grey. What I need to do to fix that is I'm going to duplicate my main image like that, and I'm going to duplicate the white like so, and I'm going to drag that up. So I've basically got a copy of two layers, but I want to merge them together so that I maintain my original lines, but I've got the white over the top where all the grey murky bits are. So I'm going to select them both, held down the shift key, selected them both, right click, merge layers like so. Now if I change this from a normal mode to a multiply mode, you'll see if I toggle it on and off, it's really boosted that black, and that is what the multiply mode does. It strips out all of the white and only boosts the black. If I right click that again, I can do another copy, and that will boost even more. What I may end up doing actually is getting my white brush. So I've now got two identical multiply modes. I might decide that this is, I don't want this one to be multiplied, so I could just draw over it, with my white brush like so, and that would just kind of knock it back very slightly. So yeah, that is really how you will handle a more complex one. I've got one more example, which is a colour one, and colour tracing paper, it's really difficult to get it to look good. All the times that I have hand drawn and I've scanned it in and I've done an amazing hand drawing and I thought it looked brilliant, and I scan it in and it's always slightly disappointing. It's really, really hard to get the colour tones and everything right. I think this is probably the main reason why Procreate really comes into its own. It has some great pencils, and yeah, I've seen some really nice work by my students using the Procreate pencils. So this one again, we've got the issue of the white. If I just put a white blob there, you can see it's quite a big difference. So I would again create a curves layer like so and drag that up to make it more white. I can even check my white if I create another layer and just put a white blob there. So I might decide, actually I'm going to pull that even more and try and get it, yeah, there we go, as close to white as possible. Obviously doing that though, you are going to lose some of the detail. So it's a really tricky balance to get it white but still keep the detail. The other thing that I would do on this curves is to make the blacks slightly lighter. You can see here the blacks are really black, but if I drag this and I am looking at this end, where the blacks meet in the graph, the curves, is just pull it up slightly. You can see if I go all the way, they end up grey, which is not so good. I'll just do that. Let's just see if we can move that. Yeah, that's better. So also I'm moving the whites away just to get rid of this peak here. And that has actually preserved the structure of the rest of the colours whilst making the background white. So that is pretty good. There are a few other things you might want to fiddle around with. You could change the colour balance. You might change the brightness and a few other bits and pieces on here. But yeah, that is a definite improvement. So yes, hopefully that helps you with your scans and your hand drawing presentations. And of course, if you're just bringing them in, these are the reasons that I've done this. It's because I've drawn over them in Photoshop. So I've done my hand drawn lines, and actually, yes, the way that I've done them is on tracing paper. I stuck my tracing paper over my monitor with masking tape, and I had the SketchUp image with the house and so on, and then I've added all the planting, the line work. You can see my hand drawing is not great, although in my defence this is from 2020, so I like to think I've improved by then. Anyway, if you've got any questions, then leave us a comment.